Hello
This
everyone,
is the
welcome to
story
the
of a man
Stanley
named
Parable.
Stanley worked for a company in a big building where he was employee number 427. Employee number 427's job was simple. He sat at his desk in room 427 and he pushed buttons on a keyboard.
Sounds like
Orders
my job.
came to him through a monitor next to his desk, telling him what buttons to push, how long to push them, and in what order. This is what employee 427 did every day of every month of every year. And although others might have considered it soul-rending, Stanley relished every moment that the orders came in, as though he had been made exactly for this job. And Stanley was happy.
Right.
And then one day something
happy
very
in quotes.
peculiar happened. Something that would forever change Stanley. Something he would never quite forget. He had been at his desk for nearly an hour when he realized that not one single order had arrived on a monitor for him to follow. No one had showed up to give him instructions, call a meeting, or even say hi. Never in all his years at the company had this happened, this complete isolation. Something was very clearly wrong. Shocked, frozen solid, Stanley found himself unable to move for the longest time. But as he came to his wits and regained his senses, he got up from his desk and walked out into the hallway.
Okay! So, this is the Stanley Parable. Half-Life 2 source mod. I don't know a lot about it. But I may need to edit the recording
Stanley
settings.
decided to go to the staff lounge to check on his co-workers. He never functioned well by himself and constantly needed support and guidance from others, so the thought of total solitude was terrifying to him.
Because this is running at some ridiculous frame rate right now, but not constant. So I'll be back in 1 second. Alright, I'm back. Let's try this again.
When Stanley came to
Oh,
a set
God.
of two open doors, he entered the door on his left.
Why would I do that? I'm not doing it.
This was not the correct way to the employee lounge, and Stanley knew it perfectly well. So he turned left at the first open door and walked back in the right direction.
Right. Kind of reminds me of, oh man, what's it called? It's called Insert Title Here. If you haven't watched that, watch that, because it was really reminding me of it.
Stanley was so bad at following directions, it's incredible he wasn't fired years ago. Maybe this is why everyone had left. No one wanted to be around someone as bad at listening
Oh,
as
God.
him. And since he was walking into the middle of nowhere and thus ruining the entire story, Stanley decided that he would punish himself. So when he came to the elevator and the doors opened, he stepped inside and pushed the button to go up.
This is really interesting. Anything that has like a personal narrative telling me what I should do, I do the opposite. That's the Brad way. Okay, let's go. I'm scared. There's no sound at all. Oh God. Alright. This looks good. What is going on?
It almost perplexed Stanley that he had actually gone and stepped into this metal trap. After all, it should have been no surprise that this thing would lead him to his death. But he thought to himself, this is simply the price to pay for ruining a perfectly good story. So he resigned and willingly accepted his fate, the inevitable end toward which he had spent so long stumbling.
Don't do it!
Farewell,
I'm sorry!
Stanley.
I'm sorry! I'm gonna go back! I wanna go back, I'm sorry! I'm sorry! That sounds just like the narrator from Little Big Planet.
Farewell, Stanley. cried the narrator as he sent his subject down the conveyor belt and into the enormous metal jaws. In a single visceral instant, Stanley was obliterated as the machine crushed every bone in his body, killing him instantly.
What? But I didn't die. I'm so confused. Alright, going down here.
It's a shame, then, that for all his work, it was such a meaningless victory for the narrator. Did he really think he would accomplish anything by murdering this disposable vessel?
I wanted to play chess, man. Come on. Can't interact with anything. Can't do anything. I don't know where I am. I don't know why I didn't die. Is this really the exit?
Every possible choice Stanley could make had been designed for him long before he ever set foot here. The narrator wanted to kill him. Stanley was already dead from the moment he hit start.
What? Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. Why can't I get out of this? Is this a bug? That is not cool. I cannot get out of this. I'll be back in a second. And I'm back. I believe that was actually a bug. I had to replay the entire game, and I did save this time. I'm not good at saving in games, if you hadn't noticed recently. Did I win?
There's no salvation for either of these two, I'm afraid. The narrator had as little power over Stanley as Stanley did over the paths that he walked. But listen to me. This story is not over. You can still save these two. You can stop the program before they both fail. Push escape and press quit. There's no other way to beat this game. As long as you move forward, you'll be walking someone else's path. Stop now, and it'll be your only true choice. Whatever you do, choose it. Don't let time choose for you. Don't let time...
Well then. I suppose that's it. If you enjoyed the Stanley Parable, please like, favorite, comment, subscribe. I'll be playing it again to see what the other paths do. I gotta think about this, and I'll be back. Alright, and I'm back. This really reminds me a lot of insert title here. It's kind of like a psychology mindfuck type of thing. Like, give the player a set of circumstances and see what he does. This doesn't look good.
As Stanley entered the lounge, he was horrified to find not a single person here. He decided he would walk up to see his boss, hoping that he would find an answer there.
What's all this nonsense? Some type of schematic. Popular scientist, New York Times saying end is near. Some children's drawing. Circuit board. Wave diagram. All kinds of nerdy stuff.
Coming to a staircase, Stanley walked upstairs to his boss's office.
Alright, so here's where I save. And I'm gonna disobey again. Obviously. What else would I do?
But Stanley just couldn't do it. He considered the possibility of facing his boss, of admitting that he had left his post during work hours. He might be fired for that. And in such a competitive economy, was it really worth taking that risk? all because he believed everyone had disappeared? His boss would think he was crazy. And then something occurred to Stanley. Maybe, he thought to himself, maybe I am crazy. Everyone I know simply vanishing out of the blue, there's almost no other explanation for it. And a nagging fear began to creep up in his mind. Questions that had been there all along. He just hadn't put his finger on them yet. For example, why couldn't he see his feet when he looked down? Why did doors close automatically behind him wherever he went?
Breaking the fourth
And
wall
for that
here.
matter, these rooms were starting to look pretty familiar. Was he just walking around in circles? Where am I, he thought. And the more he found himself unable to answer these questions, the more questions continued to arise, until he came to the issue that had been slowly boiling until he could ignore it no longer. Why is there a voice in my head, dictating everything that I'm doing and thinking? Suddenly, every door slammed shut. "No!" Stanley screamed. "I need to get out of here. I need to know that there's something out there. I need to know it's not just all in my head." And he screamed and clutched at his skull as the voice grew harsher and the music in the background rose higher and higher.
Oh, he's gonna kill me!
And then, moments before collapsing to the ground, Stanley clenched his fists and screamed to anyone who might be listening, "I'm not real! I'm not real! Don't believe any of it! None of it's real!" And then everything went black.
You bastard.
This is the story of a woman named Mariella.
What?
Mariella woke up on a day like any other. She got dressed, went to work, clocked in, clocked out, and then she walked home. But her walk on this day was interrupted by the body of a man who had stumbled through town talking and screaming to himself, and then collapsed dead on the sidewalk.
So he was crazy.
Moments after seeing him, she would turn, run to the nearest police station, and call for an ambulance. But for just a few brief seconds, she merely stood there, unable to move. The tragedy was not the death of a single person. It was that she would never know this man's story, never hear in his own words what had happened to him, or what he believed had happened to him. For to know these things would be to exist inside the head of the man himself. So all she could do was observe from a distance and pity him.
I'm loving this music.
But Mariella had places to be and people to meet with, very important people, whose impressions of her would affect her career and indeed the rest of her life. She stood there for only a moment.
It's a very long
looking down
moment.
at the body, and then she ran.
Well, wasn't that special? I guess that's the path you're supposed to take. But we have one more path left to take. So I'll be back in a second. Alright, I'm back. We're going to the boss's office. This is the path that the narrator actually wants me to take, so this better be good. Because he wants to kill me.
Entering his manager's office, Stanley was once again stunned to discover not an indication of any human life. It was at this point that he began to feel dizzy and a little sick, and even thought he might pass out when suddenly he noticed a keypad next to the filing cabinet in the corner of his boss's office. Stanley had never seen this panel before and had no idea what combination of numbers would produce any result. In fact, only Stanley's boss knew this, since the panel withheld access to the boss's greatest, darkest
Did you
secret.
see any numbers
And
anywhere
so
else in the
he
game?
had assigned the keypad a combination that only he could possibly know. The number of his freshman dorm number in college. 1957. But of course, Stanley couldn't possibly have known this.
So how... Wait, I gotta think again. I couldn't possibly have known this, but you told me.
Yet incredibly, by simply pushing random buttons on the keypad, Stanley happened to input the correct code by sheer luck. Amazing. Stanley ventured forth into the newly opened passageway.
Wait. Why not? This is ridiculous. Why would you have this in your office?
As he drew deeper into the bowels of the building, Stanley had no idea where he was or what this place held. And just as he began to think he might not discover a thing, he emerged into a long room to find...
Yeah, this game is creepy even though nothing has happened. Like, it's just kind of unsettling with the Little Big Planet narrator going. Oh god, what am I gonna find?
rows and rows of monitors. Screens with a number above it. Stanley noticed, however, that these were not random numbers, but the number of employees who worked
Well, that's
in the
not crazy.
building.
He wants to
His
monitor his
co-workers.
employees.
Even his own number, 427, had a place on the wall. But why a setup so elaborate, he asked. Was this simple surveillance, or something even more?
It's a conspiracy,
And
man.
as if in answer to his question, the wall slid open before him, revealing the ultimate truth of the situation.
Am I in the Matrix?
An enormous control panel, Stanley discovered, but not one that controlled simple machinery. Buttons were labeled with emotions. Happy, sad.
Really?
Levers and knobs controlled actions. Walking, eating, doing work, or watching TV. Every input on this device monitored not the functions of a machine, but of a human being. And the reality began to sink in. Stanley, like so many other people, reduced to images on a monitor, had been under someone's control, always at the mercy of this machine. Could this have been the only reason employee number 427 was content with his boring job? That a machine had altered
Probably.
his emotions to accept it blindly? He began to feel an unbridled rage, and at the peak of his anger,
God.
something happened. A spark.
Ah!
Stanley looked up and saw the generator overhead, still providing some small amount of power to the machine, keeping it alive. And knowing that this generator was all that kept the controls running, Stanley moved to the ladder in the back of the room and began to climb towards the rafters.
Well, I don't really have a choice here. Half-Life 2 got the ladder climbing. Just the best I've ever seen in any game. Some games it's just awkward, but I mean, this game you just kind of walk right up it. Like that.
The higher Stanley climbed, the closer he felt to freedom, the further from enslavement.
I should play Half-Life 2 again. Someday, my friends. Not a mod, not a freaking, I don't even know. Just the actual game. It's so good. Oh, I got a choice. You know what we're gonna do? Save the game. Saved. Narrator isn't saying anything. We're gonna engage it.
Oh, Stanley, you didn't just activate the controls, did you?
Yeah, I did.
After it kept you enslaved all these years, you go and you try to take control of the machine for yourself? Is that what you wanted? Control? Stanley. Stanley. I applaud your effort, I really do. But you need to understand, there's only so much that machine can do. You were meant to let it go, turn the controls off and leave. If you want to throw my story off track, you're going to have to do better than that.
I already threw it off track
I'm
twice.
afraid you don't have nearly the power you think you have. For example, and I believe you'll find this pertinent, Stanley suddenly realized that he had just initiated the network's emergency detonation system. In the event that this machine is activated without proper DNA identification, nuclear detonators are set to explode, eliminating the entire complex. How long until detonation then? Oh, Let's make it, say, 2 minutes. Now, this is making things a little more fun, isn't it, Stanley?
Where am I supposed to go?
Play with those controls all you like. The real controls are where I'm sitting. Did you really ever believe you held any power? Did you not think I knew what I was doing? When I erased your co-workers and turned off the machine, I was offering you freedom, an escape. I didn't have to do that. I've run this story many times, and I don't always set you free. Sometimes you just sit there, day after day after day, doing your job forever, and then dying alone. But when I actually give you the freedom to control your own actions, it's not enough. I let you go, and you trapped yourself just the same. You just weren't made to handle this sort of responsibility, I'm afraid. But you know what you were made for? Pushing buttons. You get it now? Oh, I'm enjoying this. Tell you what, I'll throw some extra time on the clock just because I'm having so much fun. There we go. You see, I want to watch you for every long second you try to puzzle this out. After all, it should make sense, right? The timer, the nuclear detonation, the mysterious facility, it's all here. This is a video game.
Oh my god!
Except for one thing there, hero. You've got no weapon, no vehicle. You don't even know where you're going. When you saw that timer, you just instinctively started trying to find an exit, didn't you?
This is exactly
In
like...
fact, I bet you're still looking for a way out. I bet you're clicking on everything in this room, trying to open doors or vents or something, and
Exactly like insert title
as though
here.
this game has a solution, as though it can be won. That timer is not a catalyst to keep things moving along. It's just seconds ticking away to your death. This is not a challenge. It's a tragedy. It's the moment when the hero realizes that despite his best efforts, he is powerless to his environment. And then he lets go. He surrenders. And he dies. 30 seconds, Stanley. 30 seconds. Until a boom, and then nothing. No ending to this story, just you dying. I suppose you could have gotten an actual ending if you played along, but that just wouldn't have been your style, would it? Instead, you'll perish knowing that the only choice you made here was to turn on that machine and to start this time.
Narrator, Little Big Planet
But you won't
narrator,
be
you're a
there,
bastard.
Because I'm not going anywhere. I'll be here to watch every second of your inevitable life from the time we fade in until the moment I say, happily ever after.
Whoa! Okay. And we got one more ending to find, so let's just go ahead and do it. I don't know how they made me hate this narrator so much. I want to strangle him. Okay.
Blackness. Power gone. All alone. And then... As he stepped through the door, into the fresh outside air, a feeling of liberation rushed through Stanley's body. He had seen power. He had seen enslavement, and he had destroyed it. The underling was in control now. He had found his leading role. Stanley never discovered why everyone had gone missing, nor how and when he had come under the machine's control. But it didn't upset him terribly, because he knew that this was how things were meant to happen. All he felt was a delight unlike any he had ever known before. Never again would he follow someone else's orders without question.
That's what he
Never
did.
again would anyone tell Stanley where to go, what to do, or how to feel. No more bosses. No more instructions on a screen. Stanley decides for himself now. And he stepped out into the world, and he felt the cool breeze upon his skin, and Stanley was happy.
Man, that was really cool. To the game developers, Davey Reedon, I really want to see more. I want to see that fleshed out in a full game. I would definitely pay for that. Kevin Brighting, you were a great narrator. I really enjoyed that one. Really 9 Inch Nails. Alright. Thank you for playing this video game. You're welcome. As I said to the game developers, please continue developing this game. That was awesome. I really want to see that fleshed out into a full, like, 1 or 2 hour game. That'd be amazing. And to my viewers, thanks for watching. Please like, favorite, and subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this. I want to find more stuff like this. As I said, I played the game, insert title here, and this really reminds me of that. But anyway, enough rambling. See you next time. Bradier21 signing out.